Good morning. Welcome to Hebrew 1. Want to provide a study guide for you as you prepare to come to our class in about 2 weeks. So I'll try to do one of these for every time we're together, and I'll do a study guide. And so let's jump in right away. So this is the study guide for Chapter 1, and this is what I want you to do. So you have Fuller Love's book, and I want you to read through the Chapter 1, the introduction. And that's going to give you a baseline to work off of. Don't do all the exercise, but read through and get the basic gist. What we're going to do, and what I want you to be ready with that very first day, is I want you to learn the Hebrew alphabet. And if you talk to 15 different Hebrew teachers, they're going to give you 15 slightly different ways to pronounce ancient Hebrew. There are two basic ways. There's modern Hebrew and there's ancient. It's been my experience that the people who can read Hebrew the best all follow the modern pronunciation. That's what I was taught. That's what my best teachers have used. And so that's the one that we'll use in this class. The two patterns for doing this aren't all that different, and so we'll look at the ancient one, but we're going to use the modern one. We're going to do it for a couple reasons. One is when you talk to Israelis today, of course, that's what they're using. And two, they're massive files for us to use. And so they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And there are people who have done MP3 files for the entire Bible, and they use this more modern pronunciation. So that's the one we'll follow, and it's the one lots of teachers will use. But if you just get on YouTube and type in how to speak Hebrew, you'll find that they're going to be pretty different ways. And so we'll just use one, and we're going to copy one really good speaker. So that's what we'll do. I want you to learn to write out the Hebrew alphabet. And the best advice I can give you there is just look at the printed text and try to mimic that in your writing as closely as possible. There are people who will tell you to write a little bit differently, and that's okay. It looks kind of backwards, in my opinion, and the best Hebraists I know all have pretty good handwriting, so just look at the printed text and try to copy it as closely as you can. By the time you finish preparing for this week, I want you to be able to read out loud the text from Genesis 1 to 5, and I'm going to help you with that now. And of course, when we come together, we're going to practice, but I want you to try to be ready to do it when we kick off our class. We're going to memorize the top 500 words in Hebrew. We'll meet together 20 times over the course of this year. And so basically we're going to do 25 words a time. If you just went through and counted up all the words used in the Hebrew Bible, there are 309,000 words. That's the bad news, almost 1/3 of a million words. The good news is there are only 8,000 different words. And of those 8,000, 2,500 of them are proper names. So really, there are only 6,000 words that you have to learn to know every word that appears in the Hebrew Bible. And with any language, when you're learning that language, if you learn the top 500 words, you'll be able to understand about 80% of the conversations. So our goal for the year is we want to get top 500 words down. So that means we do 25 time. We'll start this time. And so I'll have a quiz for you, and I'm going to link that here. It's not hyperlinked now, but when I save it, I will link it, and so you'll have the actual quiz. And so when we first come together, be ready to take that quiz. First thing right off the bat, you'll have this video, you'll have your study time. Now, let me just say a word about studying for language. Some of us, when we were taught how to study, we weren't really taught how to study very well, and so it comes to something like a language, and it can be a little difficult. The great thing about Hebrew is the grammar of it is pretty easy. My professor, who had studied at Yale, said you can write the entirety of Hebrew grammar on the front of one notebook page and half the back. So if you've had Greek has a lot of grammar and different things. Hebrew, not so much. It's a much simpler language, and so we'll work through it. The vocabulary is pretty much the only challenging thing, vocabulary and then the alphabet. But once we have that, it's going to be very easy, and we're going to get to the place. If you'll let me instruct you, we're going to get to the place where we can volume read. And when that happens, that's a great day. So I'll give you the quiz. You can prepare for it. We'll take it first thing. So what do we need to know? Well, the first thing we need to know is the alphabet. And so there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And it goes Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. The Aleph is a silent letter, or some people it's the sound, an initial going in of air, aha, kind of that pre-sound. First letter, Aleph. Beit is the B sound. Gimel is the G sound. Dalet is the D sound. Hey is the H sound. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. And so you want to get where you can write that. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, and Hey. Just get where you can write that down, get where you can say it. Now, the one tricky thing about the Beit is part of what's called the Begad Kafat letters. B, G, D, K, PH, and T. Begad Kafats. And the Begad Kafats in ancient times had two different pronunciations. One was a kind of simple pronunciation, the B as in boy, and then there was a pronunciation that was kind of what I call a wet H sound was added. So boy and voy, much fuller. Originally, all the Begad Kafats did that. And later, scholars came up with a way to tell you which one was which. So if it has the dot in it, the initial way to think of this is that dot takes away that full wet H sound. So with the dot, it's B, and some people just do the rule, with the dot it's B, and without it it's V. When you listen to people talk, you can hear that it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that will be our rule. So, Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Now, you see in the Begad Kafats here that I've highlighted 3. And the reason is, in modern pronunciation, people don't really follow the Begad Kafat rule anymore, the original one, for the G, the D, and the T. So kind of makes it confusing. We're learning their language. We're bending to their rules. And so that's what it is. It'll become clear when we hear native speakers speak. You'll eventually pick it up. But no, the begagfats have two different sounds. And so Beit, Gimel, and Dalet are all begagfat letters. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. And then we get to the sixth letter, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yud. Now, Vav is the modern way people pronounce this letter. You will hear a lot of biblical people talking about a wow. So some people will talk about a Vav consecutive. Some will talk about a wow consecutive. It's the same thing. It's just following two different pronunciations. The wow is probably the more ancient way to do it. The problem is we don't really have native speakers who use the wow. So you will get very precise biblical students using the wow. But if you're trying to find someone to mimic, you're going to have to go with the modern. So I was taught Vav, and Vav will be what will appear in the MP3 file. So I encourage you, you can do it either way you want. It's both will be counted correct. Vav, Zayin, Het. Now notice that this H has a little dot underneath it, so it's kind of a funny H sound. So you've got an H here, and then an H sound where the line goes all the way up. Well, the one that goes all the way up is the Het, and it's kind of the CH sound in Bach, or Lach, or Ich. It's a fuller sound, so sometimes you'll see it transliterated CH. So it's somewhere between that hard CH and an H, kind of that middle place of Bach. Tet is a sharp T. Yud is just the Y sound. I guess I should put that. I did not realize that my notes were complete there. Het, Tet, Yud. Kopf. So this is begagkafat. Without the dot, it has kind of that full H sound. The dot takes away that sound. And this is how it's written if it's at the end of the word. Now, you may look at that and it looks exactly like the Dalet. Well, the difference is the Dalet doesn't go below the line and the final Kopf does. Becomes very easy when you read the text. Lamed is L. Mem is the M sound, final Mem here. Nun, N sound, final Nun. Samik, S sound, S is in C. And then this is an ayin, and this is a really hard sound for us to make. Think of the back of your throat, way back in your throat, and think of squeezing that. So ayin. So you've got an aleph, which is kind of a smooth sound, and then you've got an ayin. Ayin is hard to say for us, and it's a glottal stop. Most people just don't treat it as anything. So some really good speakers can do the ayin. Some people just ignore it. We'll call it a glottal stop. Pei, with the dot, you think of it taking the H sound away, the wet H sound. If it doesn't have the dot, it has that. So many people will call without the dot, an F sound or PH sound, and then P is in pi. Sade is kind of like the TS sound in cats, sade. If it's a final form, it's written like this. Kof, K is in kangaroo, ki, reish. It's kind of interesting that it's an inverted form of our R. Then the 21st letter is sin or shin. Now, in our text, sin or shin will have a dot, and if the dot is on the left, it's a sin, and if it's on the right, it's a shin. 30 plus years ago, when I learned Hebrew, my professor, who wasn't conservative at all, he said, it's a great mnemonic device. Sin is always on the left. And so it was funny, and we laughed. And so if that helps you, use that mnemonic device. And then tav is the T as in top. So first off, right off the bat, you want to get where you can say the alphabet. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yud, Kop, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik, Ayin, Pei, Tzadi, Kof, Reis, Sin, Shin, Tav. That's probably way too fast. Let's go slower. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. I group them in 5 like that. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Next group, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yud. We're almost halfway home just with that. Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yud. Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik. 3/4 of the way there, almost. Ayin, Pei, Sadi. I do those together. I don't know why. Kof, Reis, Sin, Shin, Tav. 22 letters. The reason we know there are 22 letters is because in the acrostic poems, in the Psalms, they don't distinguish between these two versions. They just have one letter. And even in the story, there's a difference between Sibboleth and Shibboleth. That's what it's talking about. So that's the alphabet. Now, it's probably going to take you, I don't know, a good hour to get that down, 2 hours maybe. So work hard and then take a break. You'll find when you're studying something difficult, you're going to work hard and then you'll need to take a break, go find something to do. Sometimes when I'm studying at home and things are a little hard, I'll get my guitar and play for 5 minutes. I don't recommend you surf the internet because you'll find yourself 35 minutes later, but take a 5-minute break, worked hard, and then go at it again. So when we come back, we've got these consonants. Did you pick up that all these are basically consonants, but there are no vowels? And the reason that is because in the original Hebrew text, there were no vowels. The vowels were added maybe 400 AD. They're called pointing, but if you go to Israel today, you can find a newspaper that will have little dots and it'll tell you, put an A here or an I or whatever. But once you master the language, you don't get those dots anymore. And so Hebrew originally was unpointed, and the texts that we find, the ancient texts, are all unpointed texts until you get about 400. But thankfully for us, there's kind of this system of training wheels. And so what you have is the later manuscripts all come up with different systems to tell us which vowels to supply. And The main one in our printed text our manuscript is B19A, and so in the Leningrad Codex, they call it. And this is the training wheel device that they give us which things to use. And so there are 14 marks. These are called points, or in modern Hebrew, they call them nikodim, that will tell you what kind of letter to add. And those are basically written underneath the letter, so you read it up, down, and then you go to the next letter, up, down, and then go to the next letter. So this, and the little circle represents a letter, would be the ah sound in father. It's the long A sound, if you will. A shorter version of that is the patak, comments. You can hear the sound, comments, patak. For most people, it's exactly the same sound. This is a little shorter. In native speakers, I can't hear the difference. But ba, and then this is called a hatef patak, and that's a half patak. But most people are just going to do them all as ah. And if you can remember, do this one a little shorter, then you're going to be in good shape. Ah, 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 ba, ba, ba. When we come to the E class vowels, the sere is the A as in they, so this would be be. This would be be, so EH. The segol is a shorter form of the sere. And then we have a hatef segol, but again, it'd be hard for us to distinguish, but if you can remember, do it a little bit shorter than a regular one. So this is a hirik, I as in hit, hirik. A hirik yod is a E sound, like Elohim is that hirik yod. So if you can remember Elohim, that will be your sound. Holim is the O as in pole, holim. Holim vav is kind of the fuller way to write that. So before there was pointing, what the manuscripts would do, they started using some of the letters as kind of pseudo vowels, and so the aleph became the A sound, and so you'll see both those written in ancient manuscripts where they're adding, they call it mater lectionis, a mother of reading. So the fuller way to write a holim is a holim vav. Then you have a U sound. This is the fuller way to write it, a shurik. And then the shorter way to write it is a kibbutz. And the sound, boo, boo. I mean, we're all speaking with an accent, and so that's what people do. And then the comments hatuf is the remnants of an O class letter, ah as in odd, but you can hear that that's almost the same as ah as in father, and so we have to know that that comments can be an O class or sometimes the A class, but there's very little differentiation in pronunciation. Now, there are different ways to try to get those 14 sounds. So this is another way. This is a chart that you'll see sometimes, and they'll call these historically long vowels and short vowels, half vowels. My advice is find the best reader you can and mimic. And so I'm going to give you links to perfect readers. Listen to what they do and copy them, realizing that you're probably going to speak, Southern American Hebrew, kind of do a Spanglish, or as people in China learning to speak American English or struggle with it, we're going to struggle. Everybody struggles with saying the sounds in another language. That's okay. But the great thing is we're only reading. We're not conversing. So perfect pronunciation isn't absolutely necessary for us to become very good readers. So work through that. And here are our vocabulary words. Now, there are 103,000 words in Hebrew. You go to the Hebrew Bible, 309,000 words, almost a third of a million words. If you learn these two words, of those almost third of a million words, you've learned 1/6 of them. 1 out of every 6 words in the Hebrew Bible is the word and or the word the. So, yes, there are 309,000. The nice thing is there are only 6,000 different words, and once we learn these 500 top words, we'll know 80% of all the words. So even though it sounds kind of daunting, it's really not that bad. And so what we're going to do is each week, instead of the vocabulary in full love, we're just going to work through the list of top 500 words. And when we finish 20 weeks from now, we're going to be able to handle 80% of all the sentences in Hebrew. But we've got to start somewhere, so let's start at the top. This is the word and. It's joined, just put right up against the word it modifies. It's always the first thing there if it's present. And it occurs almost 40,000 times in the Hebrew Bible. So it's ve. Ve is the word and. Now, the second one, and it occurs almost 25,000 times, is the word the. And this is slammed right up against the word, so you put it right on the front. And if you're able to, you put a doubling dagesh in the following word. So it's ha, and then it will double that first letter. But this is how you say the. Le is how you say to. L'chaim is how you say cheers in Hebrew, and it means to life. L'chaim. Be is in. It's slammed right up against the word. Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, be reshit. Reshit is beginning. Be is in. Be reshit. In the beginning. So great word to memorize. I'm just going to put in first because that's really the main meaning here. I downloaded this this list from Logos. I made a word frequency chart from Logos, and so this is just their standard definitions. But think of it as in. Fifth word for us is he. So my Hebrew professor, I loved him. He had a saying, Hebrew is the only language where who is he, and he is she, and me is who, and dog is fish. Who is he, and he is she, and me is who, is dog is fish. Who in Hebrew is the way you say he. Who is he? All right. The way you put a definite direct object, so that is, if you've had Greek, this would be in the accusative case, mark the direct object of the sentence. The way you do that in Hebrew is you put et in front of it. Sometimes you have this connecting line. Sometimes you'll have a tsere instead of segol, but this is the definite direct object marker. Men is from or out of. Sometimes they'll slam this up to the next word, drop the N off, and put a doubling dagesh. But it means from, and it's used almost 5,000 times. Ata is you singular. So if you're talking to a man and you want to say you, ata, that's how you would say it. Haim is they. Ani is I. These are all just pronouns, great words to memorize. Ani is I. And then we get to the Tetragrammaton, the 4 sacred letters, Y, H, W, H. And this is pointed. This is how you'll often see it. But they're not saying, pronounce this Yeva. They're telling you, pronounce the word Adonai. So they're putting points for the word Adonai, my Lord. And sometimes they'll put points for Elohim if they want you to say Elohim, because modern Jews won't say this out loud. The ancient convention and the convention that Jesus followed is to replace this with the word Lord. In our text, we have this written in all caps, but whenever you see it in all caps, the Tetragrammaton is what's there. El is towards. Al is upon. If you can remember, the Israeli airline is called El Al, to, upon. How do you get to a place? Well, you get it upon this airline, El Al. To or towards. Asher is who or which. Amar is say. All we said is upon. Kol is all. Lo is not. Ben, like Benjamin, son of my right hand. Familiar with that. Ki is that. And here's our she word. Who is he? But he is she. Who is he? And he is she. Haya is a verb to be or become. And I don't know if you can recognize, but the Tetragrammaton actually comes from this verb. And if you were just looking at the Tetragrammaton as a verb, it would mean something like, he is who he is, he was who he was, he will be who he will be. Can mean all of those things, but it's just playing with the meaning of this word. And then when God gives his name to Moses, he gives it in a slightly different form. He says, I am that I am. Well, it's all related to this word and this verb. Tim is you, plural, if you're talking about men. So in Southern English, you would say y'all or y'all men, Tom. So a ta is singular and a tame is plural. Then a good friend, Yisrael. Kat is like, and asa is to do or make. So how in the world will we tackle these 25 words? Well, nearly everyone who's ever done this will do it the same way. Go out and get index cards. On the index card, put the Hebrew on the front. A lot of people will get a ring too and put a hole in it and put it on the ring. And just go through it. So that is and you can cover it up. Get a piece of paper and cover it up and just say and, the, to, in, he, definite object marker, from, you, they, I, Tetragrammaton, to, who, say, upon, all, not, son, because. I would actually put because is the first one, or that is the first one. she, be, you, Israel, like, and make. So we got 25 words, 25 out of 500 that we're going to use this year. The reason you want to do cards and memorizing this, because some of the cards you're going to get immediately, like Israel. If you can just say that out loud, you're going to get it. So what you do is like you have a shoebox or something, and you put that in the shoebox because you've already memorized it. And maybe you memorize he, you put that in the, maybe you remember shoe and you put that in. And so then you go through the ones you don't know. Every now and then take the ones out of the shoebox, shuffle them up, see if you can get it. Then, since you put the definition on the back, do them backwards. Israel, okay, how do I write Israel, from the English word? And so if you do it two ways, what that will do is it will get it from your short-term memory to your mid-term memory. And learning this language is all about getting stuff in your mid-term memory and then eventually getting it into your long-term memory. And once you have things in your long-term memory, you don't even have to think about them. They're just there. So, probably take you 2 hours to do the vocabulary. So work through that. Maybe play a game if your wife wants to help you, or kids, or if you have a friend. Work through, get these 25 words, 1/20th of the 500 that we'll learn for this year. If you do that, you'll be well on your way to reading anything. All right. Now, finally, this is what we want to do. We want to actually put this all in practice. And so if we do that, this is the first 5 verses. And what I've done is I put the standard transliteration under the word. So this is Bereshit. Bereshit. And you can see Bereshit. Bereshit bara. Bereshit bara Elohim. You probably know Elohim already. Elohim. Bereshit bara Elohim et, direct object marker, et ha-shamayim. There's our doubling dagesh, shamayim, the heavens. In the beginning, he created, okay, who is the he? The he is Elohim. What did he create? He created et ha-shamayim. In the beginning, Elohim created ha-shamayim. There's our and, et, ha, aretz, and the earth. In the beginning, he created, who is the he? The he is Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. The haaretz and the earth. Hayita, this is our word haya. It's a feminine form because earth is feminine. And the earth was tohu vabohu. That even sounds bad. Tohu vabohu is used elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible of the land, just devastated. So this is a picture of something bad. V'ha'aretz hayita tohu vabohu ve'hoshek. Hoshek is the word for darkness. And the darkness was all, that's our vocabulary word, upon the faces of the deep. Hoshek was on the faces of the deep. Now it's interesting that Tehom is translated in the Greek Bible, abyss. And what we know about the abyss is that demons are afraid to go there. They beg Jesus not to send them to the abyss. And so there's darkness on it. And then the first good thing that happens, God creating is good, but the first kind of positive sentence, Veruach. So this is the word spirit or wind, and the spirit of Elohim, merachefet, was intensely hovering. Same word of a mother chick over her brood, used in Deuteronomy, was hovering. All Panay, we had that here, right? Upon the faces of Hamayim, the waters. The Ruach Elohim merachefeth al Panay Hamayim. Or I guess it's better to say that without the H. That's more common. Merachefet al Panay Hamayim. Vayomer Elohim. And this is our Amar word, said Elohim, and this is makes it he was doing it, and we'll talk about what this and does. But Elohim said, Yehi or, let there be light. So this is a jussive. We'll learn all this later, but this is a jussive. Let there be light. And there was light. Yehi or, vayehi or. Vayar Elohim, and he saw, that is, Elohim saw et haor, God saw the light, ki tov, that it was good. Vayavdeel Elohim bein haor uvein hahoshek. And Elohim divided, caused division between the light and between the darkness. Vayikra Elohim, and God called. Vayikra Elohim laor, to the light, yom. God called to the light, day. That lahoshek, that's our word from, but to the darkness, he called Laila, he called night. Vayhi erev, and there was evening. Vayhi boker, and there was morning. Yom echad, day one. So, take 2 hours. I'm not expecting you to translate it, but I do want you to get to where you can say the words out loud. By the end of the semester, on the final exam, I'll ask you to write out from memory Genesis 1:1-5 in Hebrew with the pointing. And so we're going to start now. Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz v'ha'aretz hayita tohu v'bohu v'hoshek al pnei tehom ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim vayomer Elohim yehi or vayehi or vayar Elohim et ha'or kitov v'yavdel Elohim bein ha'or uvein ha'hoshek vayikra Elohim la'or yom ve'lahoshek kara laila vayhi erev vayhi boker yom ehad. Now you're probably going to need some practice, so that 2 hours for every hour in class. We're 4 hours together, so you're talking 8 hours, 12 hours to prep to do all this. The majority of your prep is going to be here, just learning to read. So I'm not expecting you to do it perfectly, but I want you to do it as well as you can. This is a great YouTube of a native speaker. It's very fast. This is a native speaker as well, much slower. Use both of those. And then when we come together, I want you to be able to read this, Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashemayim. And so you may not get there. Hebrew is about grace. We're brothers. It's not how fast you start. It's where you end up at. We're going to end up at the place, if you'll take my advice, we're going to end up where you're going to be able to volume read. And that's going to be a great day because you are as close to the Hebrew Bible as your people may ever get. And they're treasures there. They're treasures on every page of the Hebrew Bible. And it's my delight to help us as we seek to learn this language. So I'll post it on Canvas. I'll have a link at the bottom in this document for the quiz. Don't worry about that. That's just some information. And we're going to have a great time. So I'll see you at 5 o'clock 2 weeks from yesterday. And this is going to be delight. So I'll see you then.